The campus buzzed with excitement on graduation day. Families dressed in their Sunday best clutched bouquets and balloon arrangements, their faces beaming with pride. I had been looking forward to this moment for years, my grandson Oliver's college graduation. At 65, I'd worked my fingers to the bone to see him walk across that stage. I smoothed down the wrinkles of my navy dress, the nicest one I owned, purchased specially for this occasion from the department store where I'd used my employee discount. The spring breeze carried the scent of fresh-cut grass as I navigated through the crowd, my heart swelling with anticipation. "Grandma Heather." I heard Oliver's voice before I saw him, standing tall in his graduation gown, the tassel of his cap swinging slightly as he turned. "Oh, Oliver." I rushed toward him, arms outstretched, tears already forming. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart." His smile tightened when he saw me approach. He glanced nervously at the group of well-dressed young people standing nearby, classmates and their families, I assumed. A beautiful young woman with perfectly styled hair clung to his arm, eyeing me with barely concealed judgment. "Thanks for coming," he said, his voice noticeably lower than usual. He accepted my hug stiffly, patting my back twice before pulling away quickly. "I wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied, reaching into my purse. "I have something for you." "The ceremony's about to start." He cut me off, checking his watch. "They're taking photos of the graduates with their families first." My heart lifted. "Oh, that's wonderful. I'm sure your mother would have been so." "Actually, Grandma," Oliver interrupted, leaning in close to whisper, "maybe you should just find your seat? It's getting crowded and—" His eyes darted toward his friends again. "Could you maybe just hide from the camera? So you don't, embarrass me in the photos?" The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood frozen, my hand still in my purse, clutching the envelope I'd brought. In that moment I felt every wrinkle on my face, every gray hair, every sign of the years I'd dedicated to this boy standing before me. "I see," I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady despite the heaviness in my chest. "Of course, dear." Oliver didn't even notice the hurt in my eyes. He was already turning back toward his friends, his girlfriend's arm snaking around his waist. "Your seat should be in section C," he called over his shoulder. "I'll see you after." I watched him walk away, laughing easily with his friends, ashamed of the woman who had raised him. The woman who had held him through nightmares after his mother, my only daughter, died in that terrible accident. The woman who had worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over his head and food on his plate. Slowly, I made my way to the seating area, but I couldn't bring myself to sit down. Instead, I walked toward the row of chairs reserved for the graduates. I found Oliver's, marked with his name on a small card. From my purse, I pulled out the envelope I'd been saving for this day. Inside was everything. The deed to my house that I'd sold to pay for his education, bank statements showing the emptied retirement account, and a letter explaining why I had done it all. Not to make him feel guilty, but so he would understand the value of what he had achieved, how much his mother would have wanted this for him. I placed it carefully on his seat, my fingers lingering for just a moment. Then I turned and walked away from the ceremony, from the crowds of happy families, from the son of my heart who no longer saw me. As I reached the parking lot, memories flooded back. Oliver at 8, proudly showing me his science project. At 12, falling asleep against my shoulder during a late-night movie. At 16, gripping my hand at his first driving lesson. How had that loving boy turned into the young man who couldn't bear to be seen with me? The car door closed with a soft click, and I sat in silence, hands trembling on the steering wheel. Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't let them fall. After everything, I still had my dignity. And that was something no one, not even Oliver, could take from me. I started the engine and drove away from the university, away from the ceremony I had sacrificed everything to see. In my rearview mirror, I watched the campus grow smaller until it disappeared completely, just like the grandson I thought I knew. I didn't go straight home after leaving the graduation. Instead, I drove to Riverside Park where Sarah, my daughter and Oliver's mother, used to play as a child. The swing sets had been replaced and fresh paint covered the benches, but the old oak tree still stood tall, its branches stretching toward the sky like open arms. Settling onto a bench, I watched young mothers pushing strollers, their faces bright with the hope only new parents possess. 23 years ago, That had been my Sarah, with baby Oliver cooing in her arms. And then just 4 years later I received that devastating midnight call. There's been an accident, Mrs. Bennet. One drunk driver. One rainy night. One split second that shattered our world forever. I still remember Oliver's little face, confused and tear-stained, asking when his mommy was coming home. She's gone to heaven, sweetheart. I had told him, my own grief barely contained. But who's going to take care of me? His tiny voice had cracked with fear. I will, I'd promised. Grandma will always take care of you. And I had kept that promise even when it meant giving up everything. I'd been a nurse at Memorial Hospital for nearly 30 years, respected by doctors and beloved by patients. I'd just been offered the head nursing position, the culmination of my career, when Sarah died. Taking it would have meant longer hours, more responsibility. I'm sorry, I told my supervisor, hands shaking as I signed my resignation. Oliver needs me now. I took a job at the elementary school cafeteria instead. The pay was dismal, but the hours matched Oliver's school day. Evenings and weekends I cleaned houses for extra money. We moved from my comfortable 2-bedroom apartment to a tiny rental on the edge of town. Why do we have to move, Grandma? Oliver had asked, lower lip trembling as we packed his toys. Because we're starting a new adventure together, I'd said, forcing brightness into my voice despite the ache in my back from boxing up our lives. The early years were hard but sweet. Oliver would wait for me after school, his backpack nearly as big as he was, eyes lighting up when he spotted me. We'd walk home hand in hand, and he'd chatter about his day while I cooked dinner from whatever I could afford that week. You make the best mac and cheese in the world, he'd declare, his gap-toothed smile melting away my exhaustion. Every penny I saved went into his college fund. I clipped coupons, bought second-hand clothes, skipped the hair salon and doctor appointments for myself. Christmas gifts were modest but thoughtful. Birthdays meant homemade cakes instead of store-bought ones. When Oliver was 12, arthritis started gnawing at my joints, making each shift at the cafeteria more painful than the last. But I never complained. Instead, I added a third job, night shifts at the 24-hour pharmacy, stocking shelves while Oliver slept. The changes came so gradually I almost didn't notice. High school brought new friends, children of doctors, lawyers, business executives. Oliver started hiding the fact that we lived in a small rental, that his grandmother worked 3 jobs, that his clothes came from thrift stores. Could you drop me off a block away? He asked one morning before school. I told the guys my car's in the shop. We didn't own a car. We couldn't afford one. But I nodded and pulled over early, watching him walk away, shoulders squared like he was heading into battle. When he was accepted to Westridge University with a partial scholarship, I sold the only thing of value I had left, the small house I'd inherited from my parents, the one asset I'd been saving for my own retirement. Are you sure about this, Heather? My friend Patricia had asked, concern etching her face. What will you do when you can't work anymore? Oliver will be successful, I'd said firmly. He'll take care of me then. The irony of that statement hit me now, sitting alone in the park while Oliver celebrated his achievement with friends who didn't know or care about the sacrifices that made it possible. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the grass. I rose slowly, my knees protesting after sitting so long. It was time to return to my small apartment, the one I'd moved to after selling the house. Time to face the emptiness that had been growing between Oliver and me these past 4 years. As I walked to my car, I wondered if he had found the envelope yet, if he understood what it contained, if it would make any difference at all. The celebration roared around Oliver. Champagne flowed freely at the upscale restaurant his girlfriend Vanessa's parents had reserved for the post-graduation dinner. Crystal glasses clinked, expensive perfume hung in the air, and laughter bubbled over the soft jazz playing in the background. To the future Dr. Bennett, Vanessa's father toasted, raising his glass. Harvard Medical School won't know what hit them. Oliver smiled, accepting the praise that washed over him. This was his moment, his crowning achievement. Yet something felt off. His hand kept drifting to his pocket, where the envelope from his seat rested, still unopened. You okay, babe? Vanessa whispered, her manicured hand squeezing his thigh under the table. You seem distracted. Just tired from all the excitement, he replied, forcing another smile. The conversation flowed around him, plans for summer vacations in Europe, connections at prestigious hospitals, offers to introduce him to this colleague or that board member. All doors opening, all paths clearing before him. "Where's your grandmother?" Vanessa's mother suddenly asked, scanning the restaurant. Didn't she attend the ceremony? Oliver felt heat rise in his cheeks. She wasn't feeling well. Had to leave early. The lie tasted bitter on his tongue. He hadn't even noticed Grandma Heather's absence until halfway through the ceremony, when he scanned the audience during the dean's speech. By then he'd figured she had just chosen a different seat. It wasn't until he found the envelope on his chair that he realized she had left. And why? "Excuse me," he said abruptly, pushing back from the table. "I need some air." In the privacy of the restaurant's dimly lit hallway, Oliver finally pulled out the envelope. His name was written across the front in his grandmother's careful handwriting. The same writing that had signed countless permission slips, packed lunches, and birthday cards throughout his childhood. His fingers trembled slightly as he broke the seal and pulled out the contents. The first document was a deed transfer. He frowned, scanning the details, until understanding crashed over him like a wave. It was Grandma Heather's house, the house she had sold 3 years ago. The sale price circled in red, $248,500. Behind it was a bank statement showing a withdrawal of that exact amount, transferred directly to Westridge University with his student ID in the memo line. Attached was a paid invoice for his 4-year tuition. His knees weakened, and he leaned against the wall for support. A third document showed her emptied retirement account. The fourth, a series of medical bills with payment deferred stamped across them. Hip replacement, arthritis treatments, cataract surgery, all dated within the past 2 years. Finally, a handwritten letter on simple lined paper. "My dearest Oliver, if you're reading this, you've achieved what your mother always dreamed for you. Sarah would be so proud of the man you've become, just as I am. I'm not sharing these documents to make you feel guilty. I want you to understand the value of what you've accomplished. An education is something no one can ever take from you. Your mother didn't live to provide it, so I did what any mother or grandmother would do. I invested in your future. The house was just bricks and wood. Your education is your foundation for life. I have no regrets. I know these past few years you've been embarrassed by me. I'm not blind, Oliver. I've seen how you pull away when your new friends are around. How you avoid introducing me. How you've created a different story about your life. I understand. I'm an old woman who works in a school cafeteria. My hands are rough, my clothes are simple, and I don't fit into your new world. But I hope someday you'll understand that love doesn't care about appearances. I won't burden you anymore. You have your whole life ahead of you, the life I helped build. All I ask is that you build it with integrity and kindness. With all my love, Grandma Heather." Oliver slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor, the letter clutched in his shaking hands, tears flowing freely now. The memories crashed over him. Grandma Heather staying up all night when he had the flu, walking 3 miles to his baseball games because they couldn't afford gas, mending his clothes by hand, making holidays special with homemade decorations when store-bought ones were beyond reach. And how had he repaid her? By being ashamed. By hiding her away. By treating her like an embarrassment rather than the hero she was. "Oliver." Vanessa's voice cut through his thoughts. She stood over him, confusion and annoyance crossing her face. "What are you doing on the floor? Everyone's waiting to order dessert." He looked up at her, seeing for the first time how little she knew about him. The real him, not the version he'd constructed to fit into her world. "I have to go," he said, gathering the papers and standing up. "Go? Go where?" "To find my grandmother." He brushed past her, ignoring her calls, and headed for the exit. He had to find Grandma Heather. He had to make this right. If it wasn't already too late. 3 weeks after graduation, I sat in Patricia's garden, watching hummingbirds dart between flowers. My oldest friend poured iced tea into tall glasses, the ice cubes clinking softly against the sides. "He's called again," Patricia said, sliding a glass toward me. "That's the 15th time. Don't you think you should at least talk to him?" I shook my head, running my finger through the condensation on my glass. "I'm not ready." "Heather Bennett," Patricia sighed, settling into the chair opposite mine. "I've known you for 40 years. And I've never seen you run from anything. I'm not running, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. I'm finally walking toward something. For me. In the days following Oliver's graduation, I'd made a decision that surprised even myself. I'd packed 3 suitcases, donated most of my belongings to the church thrift store, and left the tiny apartment I'd been renting since selling my house. Patricia had offered her guest room until I figured things out, but I already knew what I needed to do. My phone buzzed again, Oliver's name flashing on the screen. I silenced it without answering. He showed up at the school yesterday, I told Patricia. The principal called to tell me. What did he want? To find me. To apologize. I took a sip of tea, the sweetness momentarily masking the bitter taste of memory. 22 years too late. Don't be so hard on him, Heather. He's just a boy. He's not a boy anymore, I interrupted, a rare flash of anger coloring my voice. He's a 26-year-old man who was perfectly fine ignoring me until he found out what I sacrificed. The truth was, it wasn't just Oliver's request to hide from the camera that had broken my heart. It was the culmination of years watching him slowly erase me from his life. The shortened holiday visits, the unreturned calls, the shame in his eyes when I showed up at his university events in my simple clothes. The cottage in Fairhaven is ready, Patricia said, changing the subject. She owned a small rental property in a coastal town 3 hours away. The renters moved out last week. It's yours for as long as you need it. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I can't accept that, Patty. I can't pay much. Who said anything about paying? She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. 50 years of friendship has to count for something. Besides, what's the point of having a beach cottage if you can't offer it to someone who actually deserves a vacation? The next morning, I loaded my suitcases into my 15-year-old sedan. Patricia stood in her driveway, arms crossed against the morning chill. You sure about this? She asked as I closed the trunk. For the first time in decades, I replied. I'm doing something just for me. The drive to Fairhaven was peaceful. I rolled down the windows once I hit the coastal highway, letting the salt air fill the car. Each mile put distance between me and the life I'd lived for others, first for Sarah, then for Oliver. I felt lighter somehow, unburdened. The cottage was exactly as Patricia had described. A small blue clapboard house 1 block from the ocean, with a tiny porch and window boxes waiting to be filled with flowers. Inside was simple but cozy, with whitewashed walls and comfortable mismatched furniture. I unpacked slowly, placing my few treasures around the cottage. A photo of Sarah, the watercolor set I hadn't touched in years, the quilt my mother had made. When everything was arranged, I stepped onto the porch and took a deep breath of sea air. For the first time in 22 years, I had no responsibilities. No one depending on me. No schedule to maintain. The freedom was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. That evening, I walked to the beach and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. An elderly couple strolled hand in hand along the water's edge. A young family packed up their beach toys as their children protested that it was too early to leave. Once, I would have looked at them and felt only the ache of what I'd lost. My daughter, my son-in-law, the family holidays we should have had together. Now I felt something different. A kind of peace. A sense that perhaps this next chapter could be my own. As darkness fell, I made my way back to the cottage. My phone showed 6 missed calls from Oliver. I turned it off and placed it in a drawer. Tomorrow I would buy paints and canvases. I would sign up for the community center's pottery class. I would introduce myself to neighbors without defining myself as someone's grandmother. I would begin again, not at the beginning, but exactly where I was. A woman of 65 with a lifetime of experiences behind her and, God willing, years of discovery ahead. For the first time since Sarah died, since I'd devoted myself to raising Oliver, I felt the stirring of something I'd almost forgotten: hope. Not for someone else's future but for my own. Oliver sat in his empty apartment, surrounded by half-packed boxes. Harvard Medical School orientation was in 3 weeks, but his mind wasn't on his future. It was stuck firmly in the past, and the present absence of the woman who had made everything possible. 2 months had passed since graduation. 2 months of unanswered calls, of driving to every place his grandmother might be, of questioning neighbors and coworkers who either didn't know where she'd gone or refused to tell him. He picked up the framed photo he'd found while cleaning out his closet. Him at 10 years old, arms slung around Grandma Heather's shoulders at a county fair. Both of them were smiling, cotton candy stuck to his cheeks, her eyes crinkled with laughter. When had he stopped displaying this photo? When had he begun to see her love as something embarrassing rather than precious? His phone buzzed. Vanessa. Again. They'd broken up the night of graduation when he'd left the restaurant to search for his grandmother. "If you walk out that door for her, we're done," she'd said, disbelief in her voice that he would choose his cafeteria worker grandmother over her. He hadn't hesitated. He declined the call and scrolled to the last text he'd sent his grandmother. "Please, Grandma. Just let me know you're okay." No response. A knock at the door startled him from his thoughts. He opened it to find Mrs. Reynolds, his grandmother's friend from the school where she'd worked. "You look terrible," she said without preamble, brushing past him into the apartment. "Nice to see you too," he muttered, closing the door. Mrs. Reynolds surveyed the packed boxes. "So you're still going to Harvard?" It wasn't a question, but he answered anyway. "Yes. Orientation starts soon." She picked up the photo he'd been looking at. "I remember this day. Your grandmother saved for 3 months to take you to that fair." Guilt twisted in Oliver's stomach. "Did she send you? Is she okay?" Mrs. Reynolds set down the photo and fixed him with a piercing look. "Heather didn't send me. She doesn't even know I'm here. And yes, she's okay. Better than okay, from what I hear." Relief flooded through him, followed quickly by confusion. "What do you mean?" "She's living her life, Oliver." Finally, Mrs. Reynolds sat on the edge of his couch. "Do you know your grandmother was an artist before your mother died? She could have had her work in galleries. She gave it all up to raise you." Oliver sank into a chair across from her. "I didn't know." "Of course you didn't. Because you never asked. None of us get to be just one thing in life, Oliver. We're not just doctors or nurses or cafeteria workers. Your grandmother is a whole person, with dreams and talents and interests that have nothing to do with being your grandmother." Her words stung because they were true. He'd reduced Grandma Heather to her role in his life, never considering who she was beyond that. "I need to see her," he said. "To apologize. To make this right." Mrs. Reynolds shook her head. "An apology isn't going to fix this." "Then what will?" "Understanding." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small notebook. "Your grandmother kept this the year after your mother died. She gave it to me when she moved. Said I might need it someday. I think that day is today." Oliver took the worn notebook. The cover was faded, the edges softened with handling. "Read it," Mrs. Reynolds said, standing. "Then decide what kind of man you want to be." After she left, Oliver opened the notebook with trembling hands. Inside was his grandmother's neat handwriting, dated entries from 22 years ago. As he read, his vision blurred with tears. September 8th. Oliver started kindergarten today. He cried when I left him. I cried too, but waited until I got to the car. Sarah should have been there for his first day. I don't know how to be both grandmother and mother to him. October 15th. The hospital called with the head nursing position again. The salary would solve all our financial problems. But the hours. Oliver needs me home when he finishes school. I said no. Again. November 22nd. First Thanksgiving without Sarah. Made all Oliver's favorites. He asked when Mommy was coming back from heaven. I told him she watches over us every day. Later found him talking to her photo. My heart breaks for him. December 24th. No money for the bike Oliver wants. Worked extra shifts all month but still short. Mr. Wilson from the hardware store heard somehow. Left a bike on our porch with a note saying it was a display model they couldn't sell. I know that's not true. Cried myself to sleep from gratitude. The entries continued, chronicling his grandmother's quiet sacrifices, her fears, her determination to give him a good life despite their circumstances. The final entry hit him hardest. July 30th. Oliver turned 5 today. Made a wish on his candles and refused to tell me what it was. Later found him in Sarah's closet, wrapped in her old sweater. He said he wished his mommy would come back. I can't give him that. But I promise I will give him everything else I possibly can, for as long as I live. Oliver closed the notebook, his body shaking with silent sobs. The truth of his grandmother's love, selfless, enduring, unconditional, crashed over him like a wave. He'd been so focused on escaping his humble beginnings, on reinventing himself to fit into a world of privilege, that he'd rejected the one person who had given him everything. He wiped his eyes and pulled out his phone, dialing Mrs. Reynolds. "I need to find her," he said when she answered. "Not to ask for forgiveness, just to see her. To tell her I understand now." There was a long pause before Mrs. Reynolds sighed. "There's an art exhibition at the Fairhaven Community Center next Saturday. Your grandmother has 3 paintings in it. Her first public showing." "Fairhaven," Oliver repeated. "Thank you, Oliver," Mrs. Reynolds said before hanging up. "Don't go expecting her to drop everything and come back to your life on your terms. That part of her life is over." After the call ended, Oliver looked again at the photo from the county fair. For the first time in years, he saw his grandmother clearly, not as an embarrassment, not as an obligation, but as the amazing woman who had given him wings to fly. The Fairhaven Community Center hummed with conversation as locals and summer visitors milled about, wine glasses in hand, admiring the artwork displayed on temporary partitions. I adjusted the small name card beside my 3 watercolors, Coastal Memories by Heather Bennett, and smoothed down the front of my new dress, a soft blue linen I'd splurged on for the occasion. "These are selling," Martha, the exhibition coordinator, whispered excitedly as she passed by. "2 have red dots already. You've got a gift, Heather." A warm flush of pride spread through me, a feeling I hadn't experienced in decades. In the 4 months since moving to Fairhaven, I'd rediscovered parts of myself long buried under responsibility and sacrifice. My fingers, once stiff from cafeteria work and cleaning houses, had remembered how to hold a paintbrush. My eyes, which had spent years focused on bills and homework, now noticed the subtle shifts of light on water, the delicate structures of seashells, the dance of shadows beneath the pier. "Heather!" Patricia waved from across the room, weaving through the crowd to reach me. She'd driven down for the exhibition, staying in the cottage's small spare bedroom. "This is wonderful. I've already heard 3 people asking about you." I smiled, accepting her quick hug. "It feels like a dream, Patty. I never thought I'd." My words died in my throat as I looked past Patricia's shoulder. There, standing just inside the entrance, was Oliver. He looked thinner than at graduation, his face more serious. He wore a simple button-down shirt rather than the designer clothes his university friends had favored. His eyes scanned the room anxiously until they landed on me. For a moment, neither of us moved. Patricia followed my gaze. "Oh," she said softly. "I should have known he'd find you eventually. Did you tell him?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "No," she squeezed my arm gently. "But I wouldn't have stopped him either. Talk to him, Heather. Even if it's just to say goodbye properly." She slipped away, leaving me standing alone as Oliver slowly approached. The noise of the exhibition seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of my heartbeat in my ears. "Grandma," he said when he reached me, his voice cracking slightly on the word. "Oliver." I kept my voice steady, though my hands trembled at my sides. "How did you find me?" "Mrs. Reynolds told me about the exhibition." He glanced at my paintings, surprise and admiration crossing his face. "These are amazing. I had no idea you could." "There's a lot you don't know about me," I said, not unkindly. "That's rather the point." He nodded, accepting the gentle rebuke. "Can we talk? Maybe somewhere quieter?" Part of me wanted to refuse, to protect the new life I was building. But I nodded and led him to a small courtyard behind the community center, where wooden benches surrounded a modest fountain. We sat in silence for a moment, the evening air cool against my skin, the sound of water providing a gentle backdrop. "I read your journal," Oliver finally said. "The one from after Mom died." I looked at him sharply. "Patricia gave that to you?" "Mrs. Reynolds did." He stared at his hands. "I'm sorry, Grandma. Not just for what happened at graduation. For years before that. For being ashamed when I should have been proud. For taking when I should have been giving." I'd rehearsed this moment in my mind countless times over the past months, imagining what I might say if Oliver ever found me. Yet now, faced with his genuine remorse, The carefully prepared speeches dissolved. Why did you said, though the hurt in his eyes told me he didn't, not completely. No, I don't think you do. I turned slightly to face him. Oliver, I don't regret raising you. I don't regret the sacrifices I made. But somewhere along the way I became invisible even to myself. I became the grandmother in the background of your life, useful when needed, an embarrassment when not. He flinched at my words but didn't deny them. I'm building something here, I continued, gesturing vaguely toward the community center. A life, friends, purpose. I'm painting again. I'm teaching art to children at the recreation center. People see me, the real me, not just someone's grandmother. Tears welled in his eyes. I want to be part of your life again. That's not really up to you anymore, I said gently. It's up to me. And if it happens, it won't be like before. I won't be the person who exists only to support you. I need more than that. I deserve more. He nodded slowly, wiping at his eyes. I start at Harvard in 2 weeks, he said after a moment. I know. You'll be wonderful. Despite everything, I still believed in him, still wanted the best for him. I was thinking. He hesitated, then continued in a rush. Maybe I could come visit during winter break? Just for a day or two. To see your paintings. To meet your friends. To get to know you. The simplicity of his request touched me. Not asking me to return, not expecting things to go back to how they were. Just a genuine desire to know the woman his grandmother really was. I'd like that, I said softly. We walked back to the exhibition together. A careful space between us. Not the distance of estrangement but the respectful boundary of two adults finding new ways to connect. As we reached the door, Oliver stopped. I'm proud of you, Grandma, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I should have told you that a long time ago. Something tight in my chest loosened at his words. Not forgiveness exactly, that would take time and proof of genuine change, but perhaps the beginning of healing. Inside, Martha approached with an older gentleman in tow. Heather, this is Mr. Abernathy from the Coastal Gallery in Portsmouth. He's very interested in your work. As I turned to the conversation, I caught Oliver watching me from the corner of my eye. For the first time I saw something in his gaze I'd never seen before. Not just love or gratitude but respect. Real respect. I had lost the grandmother I thought I was, but in that loss I had found myself. And perhaps in his own way, Oliver had found himself too. A young man learning that true dignity comes not from appearance or achievement, but from honoring the people who helped us become who we are.